Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. And in the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And this is my break. I would have to say, well, I'd like to say, a little bit of a break from the inside because I have been in the lessons this morning, and quite often when I come into my lives, there is a residue. So keep that in mind when we hang out together. That if you find that I'm trailing off or I'm getting deep into a subject, that sometimes it is in the lesson that I have just taken. I have been quite in depth in evolutionary documentaries as of late, where there has been great discoveries when it comes to archaeology. And my specific interest is the psychology of that as we progress in evolution. I think, with this world the way it is right now, with all the things that it's been going through and continues to go through, and how it impacts us not only emotionally, right, but mentally. And when it in fact affects us mentally, we have to look at how it affects us physically, right? And at the same time, right, we're not giving up. We are surviving, right? We are the next stage of evolution, right? This is why we get some of the insights that we do, why we are drawn to some of that content that leads us to places where we do feel like everything is going to be okay. And in my case, right, it does that. And because I show up here fresh like a loaf of bread every single day, right? My give back in the life perspective that I'm sitting in right now, in this understanding of, right, what I can give back, what I would like to give back. And then also at the same time, believing that some of these ideas of some of the things that I want to contribute, that it's possible, right? That in the lessons that I've taken, you know, it has shown me in the evidence of its truthfulness that it's possible. And so I would like to give it a fair shake, even though I've woken up to some of these ideas quite late in my life. And I have to remember that Colonel Sanders started Kentucky Fried Chicken when he was in his 70s. And oh my goodness, and we know how that went, right? And I would like to be that evidence because I do show up here every day. And I think that anybody that does make these movements to some of these goals, ambitions, dreams, some of these insights that they have, and some of those follow me's, right? That we all get, but whether or not we can drum up the courage to follow it, or drum up the understanding of, right, because lots of times we want to know ahead of time. We want to know the pothole in front of us. We want to see that pothole, right? We want to see where those dominoes are going to kink and make that whole line of miraculous movement, right, collapse within itself. We'd like to be able to see that, but we don't always get to. And that's because, well, sometimes, well, most of the time, we just haven't gotten that lesson yet. We just haven't had that experience, that adventure, right? That conversation. And it's in my hopes of just, right, just moving forward, right? Just moving, understanding that I don't have to understand it 100%, that if I just put one foot ahead of another, right, that everything will work out and it will lead me to exactly where I'm supposed to be. And if it's not, well, then I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Okay, you guys know that on Mondays, We're picking the new word of the week. Something that possibly that we can munch on, digest, pull up some of those lessons from thought leaders out there that have had experiences, adventures, conversations in these topics. Maybe that person is myself, and in my own dynamic upbringing and my own understandings and some of those lessons that I've come across that has helped me to get to this point where I'm sitting here right now sharing the story that's being played out that I get to have a say in through my choices, right? It has to be that way because if we don't make choices, we're not going to make movement. And again, because I do believe that this is an evolutionary process, and because I do believe, right, we're in that stage of conscious man, right? And not everybody, not even close, but I suspect that through the generations coming forward, that we're going to see that it is the way of things, right? Okay, let's have a sip of my coffee before we pick. I've got a whole page of words here, you guys. And each week we pull up a word and we delve into it. I have no idea. I haven't looked at what the words are since that day that I wrote them all down, but I look at the word that I pick for the week. And I suspect as we get into the words, right, and we get deeper into the list, that some of those words will come up again, right? I'll pick those words again. And that for me, I decided today would just be that hash over it, right? That there's somebody in need of that lesson, or maybe I need that lesson again. Maybe it's something that I'm dealing with in my own life that for that day that maybe we'll touch on that topic. But we're far from that because we're only done 5 words now, and there's well over 60 words here. Mm. Today I'm using my Space and Rocket Center US Cup. I am a true believer in not only evolution, right, but this idea of innovation because it comes in hand in what I'm doing and right in sharing my journey and sharing the lessons that I take each day, coming fresh like a loaf of bread, knowing that, right, what we discover, what we touch on base today will be possibly old news tomorrow, or maybe it's something we need to delve into a little bit deeper, and it takes a little bit of time. Believe me, that happens. These lessons come back into my lap all the time for rehashing, and that is a truth. There's some of the topics that I've been covering for myself this week, right back into narcissism. I always just seem when I'm ready to make a decision or ready to make a movement, there's this reminder of who I'm supposed to surround myself and who I shouldn't surround myself with, or who I should be careful about, but not stress so much about who I'm surrounding myself because, again, I'm understanding that no matter where I'm at, right, everything is going to be okay, right? Okay, you guys, let's pick this word that we're going to delve into this week. It seems kind of strange. So, seeing we've only done 5 words, I'll tell you the 5 words that we've covered just so that you can see the kind of serendipity of the patterning that it's being received in the picking of the word. So I suspect, or I'm hoping that it will be in sequencing again today, a lesson that we need right after gratefulness, because that's the word that we worked on last week. It was such a great word, right? But before that, we had respect and honor. Sorry, we had vision, then we had respect and honor, then we had choices and change. And choices and change were the 2 words. I picked the first 2 words that we were going to delve into only because of the impact that they've had in my life and in this process that I'm going through. But I was really hoping if I picked change and choices that forgiveness might not be too far behind. I know it's on this list, right? But it is a topic that I'm curious about, and a topic that I think is pertinent in order to really get that momentum going, because we hold on to grudges for too long. We hold on to these negative attitudes and these negative thoughts, and that brutality in our not being victims but being victimized. And lots of times it is hard to forgive, but when we delve into the lessons, you'll see why it's so important, especially in the way that I came in, that I was able to munch on this word forgiveness and be able to make some movement. But it's more likely than not the word for today, right? But let's pick the word that we're going to delve into, understanding that I will get that word, right? Grateful. I'm manifesting that word to be one of the next few words because, right, I think we're sequencing in a way that we could actually get some work done, right, to make ourselves a little bit more content and a little bit more ease in mind and where we're going. And more importantly, right, I love this. I love the fun of my existence. And no matter what I was doing, it would be something that I would search out in anything that I'm doing. And it was an early lesson, but I think it was a lesson that I learned on my own. But I just had to be reminded constantly through this purpose, because, right, what we're doing now is right. We want the couches. We want those remote controls. We want things to be easy. We want the silver platter. We want the check to roll in without too much effort. We don't want to see the failures. We don't want the heartbreak. We don't want the grief. We don't want the hairy scary. We don't want the anxiety. We don't want that questioning in our relationships. And we certainly want, most of all, to be able to trust in ourselves, because once we can trust in ourselves, then we won't fall into that trap and we'll be able to make better movement and better decisions for ourselves. And when we do that, we'll be better to trust others in the process. Right now, it's just a bunch of potholes in the front of us that we keep missing, and that's the failures. That's okay. But the idea is to do it with the least amount of failures as we possibly can, with the least amount of pain as we possibly can. And the sooner we can get to that word forgiveness, right? The sooner we can get some work done. But this week, right, we're just going to go like this a little bit. We're going to pick our next word and we're going to talk about it all week. Today will just be the first impressions of the word that comes to mind. Here we go. This is the word. Well, okay, you guys. How about maybe this is a good word, right? Because I just mentioned it in the past few sentences. We grabbed the word, and I will highlight it this afternoon. We got the word comfort. And, this is something, like I said, that empaths and highly sensitives, people who have struggles in their limiting beliefs, people have struggles when it comes to courage and bravery. Oh, there's a big one, because the fear is tied up in that. And that fear is the unknown. Oh my goodness. I saw you there, Melvin, but I got into such a spiel I forgot you were there. Thank you so much for coming and popping in with me again. Let me have a sip of my coffee. We got the word comfort this way. So this today, and we're gonna munch on it all week. It's a really good one, because in some of that mentorship that I've gotten in the past, let's go a half a dozen years. Let's go a half a dozen years now that I've started to wake up to some of these ideas. And those lessons specifically were about coming out of your comfort zone. And I know for a fact that my comforts cause me great discomfort. But in the moment, they were very comfortable. They were very pleasurable, right? They were very stress free in that moment. But when that moment was over, because it caused me so much havoc, and we're talking about some of those addictions I have, specifically, well, the relationship addictions that I had, right? Because of my lack of bravery and my lack of courage and my lack of understanding that maybe I could do some of that work myself, that I didn't have to be so codependent, so dependent on others, that I would believe that others knew best for me, that I didn't know anything, right? We'll get into those topics. Those words will cover some of those topics because I delved pretty deep into narcissism, because narcissism was very prevalent in my family. And because I had that role as scapegoat, um, I took on a lot that probably I shouldn't have picked up. But a lot of that I picked up to be comfortable, right? Because it was very painful childhood, very, very painful experiencing, and right, and I would like to think that I've gotten some good mentorship. I do believe I did get some good mentorship in my parentage and in my guardianship. But when I say guardianship, I'm including teachers and babysitters and right, well-meaning neighbors and well-meaning school counselors. I'm including all of that because we are like sponges when we're children and we suck up absolutely everything. But in that, sometimes we get to learn that we are there to serve in other people's movement and making sure that other people are comfortable, and it becomes very, very uncomfortable. And then we find that in those moments that we have spare time for ourselves, and sometimes that's our job, isn't it? If you have a job that you absolutely hate, you're going to work for that man, and that man is going to make your day. Not necessarily he's going to make it, but because you hate your job so much, you're going to go in there and you're just going to have a hate on it for all day, and you're going to bring your attitude to that shift, and you're going to make everybody else miserable in that, right? So one of those lessons that I got to learn very early is that we have to learn to get out of our comfort zones, right? That life is tough, and we're always going to be dealing with something that's miserable or something we don't want to be dealing with in the moment. And there's lots of negative kind of feelings out there that, right, that life dishes out to us, and we have to find in the moment that we have to fly by our seat of our pants. And sometimes we'll put those emotions and those experiences on a shelf for another day because we got things to do. Sometimes we'll let it take us down and we'll delve deep into that, right? Sometimes we look for that comfort. We'll look for the couch and the remote control. We'll look for alcohol. We'll look for drugs. We'll look for food. We'll look for shopping. We'll look for sex, right? Right? And we'll include the porn in all that, right? But you could split that and micro categorize each one of those things into different categories. And, for the most of us, we work on the symptoms, right? We work on those things, but we're not working on the actual cause of those things. And those things go deep, and those things go far back, like so far back, lots of times that we don't even have a recollect, a recollection of them. You know what I mean? That we don't even remember them. And sometimes, even if you believe in epigenetics, if you have an understanding of epigenetics, right? And if you don't, you can Google it. There's lots of content out there, even in this content that we're dealing with right now. If this is something that's new to you, do it a Google. It might give you a little bit of explanation as to what's going on in your family system and in your own system. that might give you a little bit of insight in what direction to go in when it comes to some of those understandings, right? Now, I got into it for quite a while before I got some of those lessons, but sometimes it's in the prerequisites. It's like what I said. I sure hope that I get that word forgiveness soon, because that started a lot of the healing for me, being able to get into some of those topics. And I think I'm just kind of, Cindy is kind of slipping it in here and there, right? Just reminding myself it's coming, and then bringing up the subject anyway, because to me, it's a very important part of this process. But, picking this word that we just did this week, comfort, it's a great word. It's an important word. And I think it's in sequencing, because we do have to get out of our comfort zone. We have to realize what we have done to ourselves in our choices. And we've covered the word choices, so you can go back into some of those words to find some of those lessons, because it is in our choices that the change happens. But the change only happens because of that action that we take. And if we're just looking for the comfort of it, right, the least painful way. Oh my goodness, this is something that I thought of in my own lessons outside of what we're talking about right now. But when we're talking about getting out of my comfort zone, right? When I first woke up to these ideas, and this is the honest truth, right? I had a true vision. I knew exactly the easiest way to get where I wanted to be, right? Where I knew I was supposed to be, to rediscovering, I think it's a good word to use, rediscovering the person that I was, or the person that I was meant to be. And to make it just short, I saw my potential, right? I saw it clear. I saw it, right? I know it. The easiest route. I saw it. But the idea is not to bypass. And, I kept the easiest route. It's there. It's right there. And I'm my in my hyper vigilant, and in my understanding, it's in the lessons. I'm taking those lessons, and I'm keeping my eye on the easiest route. But I know if I went, right, it's like again, being in the Olympics, and that gun goes off, right, and you've got rockets out your butt, and you just hit that red button, the rockets take off, and boom, you are at the finish line. But you didn't put in the work, right? You didn't truly love it. You just loved the competition. You just loved that idea of winning. You weren't interested in doing it in your own steam. That somebody else who was in that race trained their entire lifetime and truly believed that they had it, and they weren't cheating in any way, and they weren't bypassing those difficult runs at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that difficult dietary, right, program that they had to follow in order to keep their weight at a, right, I don't know whatever it is that they had to do in order to be the greatest runner. But no, because this guy had rockets out his butt and hit that red button, and he made it to the finish line first, right, that he won. Now, thank goodness that there are rules and regulations, and in right and it is in friendly sportsmanship that these rules and regulations are in there. Otherwise, you would have people bypass these important crucial lessons, right, because they had the innovation, right, because they had those rockets that shot out their butt and took them to the right. So that's, get back to mine, right? Pull it back, Cindy. I saw the potential of myself, right? The easiest path. I saw it. I'm on that path. I am on that path. But I do not want to bypass the lessons, right? That if I'm going to be taking lessons anyway, that I'm going to absorb them the best that I can, not bypassing the prerequisites, right? Not being in my comfort zone, not sitting on the couch with the remote control, not asking somebody else to do the work for me, right? Right? It does take a village, and we talked about this last week, that everybody having their role in the village. But remember, each one of those people who had that role in the village, they were part of a bigger group, but they were meticulous and they were the experts, right? And they got to be the experts at what they were expert at because they didn't bypass the lessons, that they took every single lessons, right? So sometimes we cover all our bases, don't we? We'll take every single lesson. Give me that course, give me that course, give me that course, right? You got degrees out the yin yang. But are you the expert in each one of those fields and each one of those degrees that you have? Are you the very best at that? Or, right, did you learn enough to get you by? Right? Will you be able, if each one of those things are needed at the same time? Possibly, right? But I think each one of us, and this wasn't the lessons that I received, and it's why I show up here every single day, right? Right? Get out of our comfort zones. And that comfort truly is a killer, because being highly sensitive, right? Being empathic, that courage is a hard one, isn't it? Right? And it's not faulting ourselves, because lots of us do that. Lots of us beat ourselves up because we see the people with the courage. We see the people out there that can make these big moves without falling apart, without having an anxiety attack or stumbling over themselves in their speech, or spending more time concentrating on, oh my goodness, am I sounding okay? Do I look okay? Right? Am I saying the right things? And if you guys hang out with me for any length of time, you know I just come in and I fly by the seat of my pants. And today we took a look at that word. It's not the first time I took a look at that word, right? It's not the first time that I have. But this word comfort, and I'm curious about it because when I look at comfort, this word comfort, the first thing that came to my mind was to get out of my comfort zone. Because I think for the most part of my life, I was meant for something more, but because I was afraid, because I was hesitant in that movement that I knew I could do, right? But because, well, other people's didn't have that faith in me, or maybe I listened to those people for too long, right? For too long, that it imprinted me in the way to believe that I didn't have a voice, or right, that I wasn't allowing myself to have a voice, or I wasn't brave enough to have a voice, right? Right, that somebody might say shut up. Right, that somebody might say, Cindy, you got a screechy voice, or Cindy, you have no idea what you're talking about. That these things, right, when we talk about comfort, these things will keep us in the comfort zone, right? And that's caring what other people think. I'm far from that. I really do care what other people think, right? And I put walls up, I have boundaries, but there are lots of people out there that don't care about that. And they'll bypass that, not having that lesson themselves. And right, they'll keep you in your limiting beliefs. And that's where I was for 57 years, people. I had no idea that I even had a right to search out some of these topics that I'm searching out now. And it's not because I need to, it's just that, well, maybe I do need to, because in those topics are the answers of some of those questions that I never got to have answered. that I had to endure. I did. I had to endure. I had to be in that discomfort, not understanding what other people didn't have to be in that discomfort. And then finally, right, as a baby boomer, have that opportunity to make some of those discoveries myself as to why. Okay, let's see what Melvin is yapping at. Yes, you are, dear, for now, but this is a podcast for later on. So it's live right now and in processing. And tomorrow, when you come in, it will be part of my progress of my 54 words. And this week, we're covering the word comfort, right? And I think because we started this word comfort, I don't want to get everybody all freaked out. We're just going to stay in this heavy, heavy work. I think some of that comfort we should discover is the understanding. And, as we move into the lessons, that, right, it doesn't seem to be so uncomfortable, that we get to realize that we're just not in this all by ourselves, that there are other people, right, doing this work too. And if you can handle a little bit of discomfort, right, as we move to that point where we're going to get that word forgiveness, because wow, once we do get that word, right, it might be on my mind so much, might say, okay, Cindy gets to pick a word. Maybe I'll do that just because I can't wait. But at the same time, I have to remember I can't be bypassing the lessons. And it seems in sequencing, right? Comfort was a good one. And it's a very good one for highly sensitives and empaths. And, there are lots of other personalities out there that can attach themselves to some of this content that we're delving into, because it's quite helpful for everybody out there, right? But only you will know, and be sure that you resonate with anything before you, right, take it on as a truth for yourself, right? I've been very, very grateful in how the information comes across to me. And I'm grateful for the lessons that I have chosen that have gotten me to the point right now. But that doesn't mean that maybe, right, in my own sense of being comfortable, oh, that topic is too heavy. Maybe I'll get into that one next week. And I did that. And unintentionally, maybe I bypassed a lesson. That might have been a very important lesson, a very important prerequisite into some of these topics that we're going into, right? But I just have to trust in that. I have to hear it all the time. Trust in the process. I do trust in the process. And even though I am non denominational, I do understand that all paths lead to. So if this is the way I'm being led, this is the way we are being led, because I show up here fresh like a loaf of bread, sharing whatever lesson that I've gotten. And Malvan, thank you for keeping me company today. Yes, you were the only one that hung out with me today. But that is absolutely amazing. I don't care if it's one, I don't care if it's 10, I don't care if it's 100, I don't care if it's 1,000, right? I'm I'm coming and I'm showing up on my live. What's on the other side? I am grateful for that, right? And for those of you who pop in later when you have a moment to put your feet up and, right, hang out with me for a little bit, right? Just like Melvin did during the process of doing my live today, right? Just remember that it's in what you resonate with. And I think this topic that we picked this week, it's going to help. It really is, right? It's curious how things show up on my platter, right? But just grateful that it does show up on my platter. Okay, everybody, that's my good cheer. Today is host day. I'm getting the laundry done. I'm getting some cleaning projects done. I'm getting ready for my trip, which is less than 2 weeks away. So we're just finishing up some things. I'm going to make myself a nice dinner today. I'm going to take in some more lessons, right? The only thing that I want to make sure that I get done on this set of days off is to, right, get over this cold. And I didn't mention it once during my life. So there's a good sign right there. Get over this cold by not taking easy on myself, right? Maybe get a little bit of Mother Nature, right? Move myself forward. I'm not staying in my comfort zone, but I also know that I don't want to wear myself down, which I did, right? You do the best that you can, and sometimes you have to come to the table because somebody else is not able to come to the table in that moment. And sometimes we take that extra load, but that's in our choices to do that. But we have to remember, right? We can only give away what's overflowing off the top of the cup. And if you see that froth is at level, well, it's time to fill that cup up again, right? Just so that you can give it away again, right? Fresh like a loaf of bread. You guys, I'll be back tomorrow. Have a great day. That's my good cheer.